Housing and Economic Development Committee meeting for October 28th, 2021. We have a very full agenda, but let's get started. Is there any public comment, Kathy and Michelle?
No, Martha, I did not receive any.
All right, thank you. We do have one change to the agenda that we should vote on. It's the appointment of Lisa Holmes to the TCAT board. Can I get a motion to add that? Moved by Henry, seconded by Annie. All in favor, Annie?
Yes.
Henry? Mike Sigler? Mike?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm a yes, so that'll be added to the agenda. Let's put it down, put under chair's report after Lisa's report. So can I get a motion on the minutes if you'd like to take the September 23rd and October 5th minutes together? Would somebody like to make a motion? Moved by Henry, seconded by Annie. Any questions or comments on the very extensive and helpful minutes? All right, let's vote on that. Henry?
Yes.
Annie?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so those are passed unanimously. Thank you. Lisa, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just a few brief updates from County Administration. First, the RFP for the community, the recovery grant program has been posted. It was posted last week on the Finance Department's webpage. And if you visit that under County Finance, under Purchasing, under Open Solicitations, you'll find it. It's on a software program called BidNet Direct. And the time for people to submit applications, the due date is on November 22nd at 1 p.m. And any interested applicants can submit questions. Any questions they have about the process should be directed through that platform. Questions will be answered and posted for all to see. And the due date to submit questions is October 15th. And we've already been receiving some questions and posting answers on that site. So good place to check out. My second update is about the airport director search process, which is fully underway. We've interviewed candidates and are continuing through that process, and hopefully we'll have some more updates next week to provide next week. But it's been a good process. I appreciate Ann Koreman participated in the process on behalf of the legislature. We've had community involvement from the Air Services Board, as well as department heads and county administration. And the candidates also did question and answer time with airport staff. So, so that's been a good process. And then finally, any COVID related updates. I see we have 7 active COVID hospitalizations, 110 active cases. And the health department is preparing for the vaccination of 5 to 11-year-olds. And we'll be, when information is available on that, you'll be able to find it on the health department website. But at this point, all 3 of the vaccines, including Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, are now approved for booster dosages, and individuals who are looking for boosters who are eligible, meet the criteria, should contact their primary care physician or can go through local pharmacies to receive those booster doses. So that's what I got.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks very much. Questions from the committee or any other? I don't know if there are any other legislators here. Annie, Henry and then Annie. Henry?
Thank you, Lisa. I was wondering, I keep hearing about the Ithaca school system having positives every day. Is that situation okay, or is that something we should be concerned about as Amy comes on the screen?
Amy is probably more involved than I am. And Amy, I'm not sure if you can speak to that question or if that's a Frank question.
Yeah. So I just got off the call, our weekly update call with the nurses, and I don't think it's a concerning situation. It's a situation where we have been expecting to have positive cases from time to time. I don't know what the prevalence is of the Ithaca City School District cases. However, they do have a majority of our young people in the county. So nothing of concern at this point. We're continuing to follow the same pattern as before. And as we've mentioned before at the legislature, we've started to shift. Really, we're focusing on the severity of the disease. And fortunately, we haven't seen severe disease in that youth population.
Also, how are you guys going to do the vaccinations for the 5 through 12-year-olds? Are you going to do it at the mall again and have people come in, or are you going to do things differently?
Yeah, so once that comes online, we'll be announcing some clinics. We're starting to work through that right now. We're working with a bunch of the pediatrician offices to set up the mall site for those 5 to 11-year-olds or 5 to 12-year-olds. There will be more information once that approval is reached. We're expecting that approval. I think November 4th is when the FDA will be making that final determination. So we're hoping that next week we'll be able to move that forward and set up some large clinics. We're planning to hold those first, much like we did with the adults, and then see where we're at and assess the situation at that point and decide how to move forward. We are using our own health department staff and as well as volunteers and the pediatricians in the community. So it's going to be a big undertaking, and I think the health department is ready to do that. That is also why we're pushing people to get booster doses at the pharmacies, because we will not be able to operate those booster dose clinics while we're focused on those 5 to 11-year-olds.
Thank you.
Annie?
Thanks. So I received my booster shot at the mall last Friday. And so the process, of course, going very smoothly as before with the regular doses. So you answered part of my question, but as far as the booster shots being at the mall, so are they still there this week, or have you stopped doing the booster shots?
We have stopped doing the booster doses from the health department. We are doing them through the pharmacies. As the additional booster doses came online, it's very complicated to figure out how all of those things work, especially now mix and match has been approved. And so we wanted to really focus on getting the youth vaccine clinics set up and having those done well. While still managing the disease. So we are not going to be providing any more booster doses at the mall. Last week's clinic was the end of that.
Okay, I was lucky to get one of the last ones there then. Okay, thank you very much. Great to have this update.
Yeah, Mike Sigler, any questions from you?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, I got my booster at the mall as well, and it was really easy. And Frank was actually there. So he was talking about the difference here because the health department was running the booster clinics. You know, we consumers didn't really necessarily perceive that the whole first and second dose regime earlier this year was run by the health system, by Cougar Health, that we assisted. So it's a very different operation from our point of view this time around. So that was helpful to know. Are there any more first dose? No first dose clinics, right? People can just go to the pharmacies if they're looking for a first dose. Okay. All right. And thanks very much. How about our staff regime? How is that working with testing, vaccination, attestation and testing?
Sure. So it is working well. It has been logistically, it's been a challenge to kick this off. We brought on 2 new staff that started the day before we started the program. So we have 2 sample collection specialist drivers who are assisting our employees that are unvaccinated. At this point, just over 80% of our employee population has attested that they are vaccinated. The remaining percentage has not attested their vaccination status or has attested that they are unvaccinated. So that's mixed in there. So some may be vaccinated that have not attested and some may not be. We are continuing to test them at this point twice a week. There is some challenges with that, obviously, because we have 24/7 operations. So not everyone works Monday through Friday in the same schedule. But we've worked through that, and we are working through those who failed to comply with the program through HR. So lots happening there. We're going to continue to look at this. We may make a recommendation to change the frequency of testing based on kind of our first month of experience and seeing how the surveillance testing is playing out. But there's definitely progress there.
All right, good. Thank you very much. Any other questions for Lisa or Amy? Okay, thanks. I guess one other point I would make about the recovery fund, and this might be a Dominic point, not really a question. I've heard a couple of news stories about, that we've rolled out this RFP with how to deal with our American Rescue Plan funds. So I'm sure your press has all been about our fund balance, but the media seems to be confusing it with the rescue plan. So
I've noticed that confusion as well, and I have answered some questions in the background, and I don't think they have a rigorous sort of editing catching some of that. So I was a little bit disappointed as well, but I think I can issue maybe another clarification to a few folks. But I think when it comes to the public, I don't know that they quite grasp the difference yet. So I'm happy to take any recommendations on what I might be able to do differently moving forward. But I can also put out more announcements as more is decided in public meetings.
okay, I'm sure. And anybody who's actually responding is certainly going to understand the difference. So, all right, thank you all very much. Appreciate your time. So let us take the resolution to give Lisa another job. That is, and Kathy emailed it this morning, resolution number 10482, recommendation for appointment to Tompkins Consolidated Area Transit Board of Directors. Can I get a motion on that? Moved by Annie, seconded by Henry. And any questions? All right. Thank you very much, Lisa. It's an important job. It does take a fair amount of time. So I think it'll be good to have administrative staff present at the table. So we will vote. Ann Koreman,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes,
and I vote yes. So that's unanimous. Thank you very much, Lisa.
Thank you.
Have fun on the board. All right. For chair's report, really the only thing I had under chair, well, a brief thing on the housing fund, the Tompkins County Community Housing Development Fund. We are meeting on Monday. The Program Oversight Committee is meeting on Monday to look at what the next round of funding will look like. And we do have a sort of happy challenge to discuss, which is we'll just be beginning the discussion of the IDA's housing policy funds that are coming to the IDA. We expect probably in November that the McKinley project, the very large housing project on East State Street, will close. At that point, they will be making a payment of about $1.6 million to the housing fund. That's in lieu of providing affordable housing within their project. That was the gist of the policy. So this is the first actual payment coming as a result of that policy. Then there are 2 other projects that will be also supporting the housing fund. later on. That's the Ithaca project on the Commons, and the Ironworks which is the interesting project where where Mama Goose used to be and Bishop's used to be, where they're propping up the exterior of the building to save the historical facade. Those two projects will start paying. We'll do 3 one-year payments starting in 2023. So that's some news for the housing fund, and I look forward to having the challenge of figuring out the best way to spend those funds. So that's starting on Monday. So we have the topic of code enforcement in front of us, and I'm delighted that CJ Randall was able to join us today. CJ is there. Hi, CJ.
Hey,
Director
how's it going, everybody?
Director of Planning for the town of Lansing. And CJ, did you want to just mention the how we got started on this conversation? And what
Yeah. Hey, everybody. In speaking at length with our Deputy Planning Commissioner, Megan McDonald, about the dearth of code enforcement officers, I anticipate that we're going to have as a result of likely mostly demographics, but also something of a lack of a pipeline, maybe a workforce development issue. I'm obviously not expert in that, but that's just kind of from reading the tea leaves. We're having trouble getting full code enforcement capacity, especially in our rural communities. And I've talked with Martha and then Assessment Director Jay Franklin as well about the possibility of at least pursuing a study-wide to consider some code enforcement functions at a county level. And certainly we're open to sharing data. We're headed in the track, I think, of town of Ithaca and the city as well to join the cloud-based software for our planning and permitting functions so that we can streamline some of these functions with county health and share our data with county assessments and anything we can do, I think, to provide continue to provide high level of services, perhaps save some money as well. I'm certainly open to participating.
Thank you, CJ. Tell me a little bit more about the cloud-based software.
Yeah, sure. So Marty Mosley, Director of Codes for Town of Ithaca, was really on the forefront of this. They examined, I believe, 8 or 9 different code. They're essentially government services platforms. They come in a variety of shapes and sizes, but he thankfully did the legwork for all of us and narrowed it down to 3 different cloud-based functions, meaning to say that folks could do plan review from anywhere. Folks could also apply for building permits from wherever they are. They could pay online. I know these are kind of things that most consumers have come to expect. It's like basic functions, but nevertheless, local government and especially local government kind of struggles with, I think, providing these kinds of services at a high level. So in any event, Marty narrowed it down to 3. I believe they have selected the service OpenGov. I'm not sure where the city of Ithaca stands with it, but I've asked the Lansing, or will be asking the Lansing Town Board to consider also migrating our data. Both us and the town of Ithaca have been using a program called Municity, and the functionality is just not really where we need it to be for the future of the myriad inspections and permits and coordination we do with Bolton Point, with the health department, DOT, fire, outside agencies. It would be really just great to be able to kind of communicate on a single platform with both the applicants, development teams, as well as staff, both at a town and county and even state level. So so I'm hoping to move forward with that soon. Marty has been a huge assistance there.
That sounds terrific. So you said, is the town of Ithaca hosting it, or did you say the county was?
I believe the discussion about it actually, from some communication I've shared with Jay recently, the topic seemed to actually come up at the code officials meeting. There's kind of a semi-regular meeting of the code officials in the county, and I believe the intent was once upon a time uh, to have the county host this as sort of a central aspect. But I think the focus was largely on Laserfish for some time, which is amazing. Big shout out to the county clerks and Mo for the Laserfish system. But Laserfish is really an archival system. It's meant to be kind of a deep dive. It's not meant to be able to act as almost like a platform for collaboration. It's not quite that, right? And you can't ask it to be what it's not. And I think that what happened then was Marty kind of went out and started researching all these companies, and he's kind of brought us along into it as well. Just the idea of, if we're not going to be able to get more trained staff, and with increase in development, with interest in people living in Tompkins County, I see, that we're going to be dealing with more housing units, more development, but not necessarily the qualified code enforcement and building inspectors that we need. So to that end, we can kind of take a bunch of different approaches, I think, and one of them could be simply just better and more efficient processes.
That sounds great. Henry, question. And then Jay,
Yes.
you get ready to, I see you lurking over there behind the screen. I want to ask Jay a question after Henry's.
Yeah, you talked about the city of the town of Ithaca, the town of Lansing, and maybe the city of Ithaca. Any other municipalities going to join this software?
That's a good question. I think it's just the conversation about it has kind of evolved organically and almost accidentally about this. So I think, Martha also is trying to get some of the word out to other municipalities. I think, we have something of a dichotomy here in the county where we have, very urbanized area, and then we have rural townships that may not even have, they're issuing maybe 8 to 15 building permits a year, maybe for, new home construction. So they don't necessarily need full-time staff. But then we have towns that are really cranking, right? We have town of Lansing, town of Dryden, town of Ithaca, and especially the city, right? So we have, maybe a different need set at these different municipalities that maybe something like this could help cover if we did investigate something at the county level.
Yeah.
Thanks, CJ. Jay, do you want to jump in and I'll go to Annie?
No, I mean, I would just say from what CJ was saying and what I heard at the code officers meeting, this is exactly what we were going through back in the 60s when we consolidated the assessment function at the county level. We couldn't find people to replace people who were retiring. There weren't just people that wanted to be a code officer through college and high school. It just wasn't there. There were part-time individuals spread out between many municipalities. And it was just kind of right we didn't save any money when we did that back in 1970. I think our study said we were going to save about $5,000 on a $150,000 budget. Maybe back then that was significant, but now we save over $600,000 as compared to a local town assessment structure. And I may be biased, but I think we do a pretty good job of still staying local. Even though we're at the county, I always tell I am a town employee, use me as such. So I think this is just a good opportunity to work collaboratively like we seem to do in Tompkins County.
Thank you, Jay. Annie, who has unique perspective as an inspector.
Home inspector.
Home inspector.
A little different, but yes, in that realm a little bit. But so I see the TCOG meeting is today. Is Martha, are you or CJ or Jay or anybody going to go to that today to tell them that we passed that resolution to look at the study?
Yeah, I'm going to go. I asked to put that on the agenda after our discussion last month at this committee. And so yeah, I'll be there. I don't know about Jay or anybody else.
I'll be there
Jay
too.
says yes. Oh, good. Thanks, Henry. Thanks, Jay.
now next you could get the home inspectors more unified and uniform, but that's a whole nother thing.
Katie, did you want to add something?
Oh, I was just going to say I'm planning on hopping on the TCOG meeting as well. I'm interested in the discussion. And CJ, I don't know if you've heard, but the legislature tentatively has authorized some funds for this, which Department of Planning and Sustainability would kind of co-lead the effort with assessment.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to help coordinate some of the rural municipalities, help do a survey. However we can help out. And it's just great to have the information, I think, if nothing else, to just look into it, see if there's anything that we all stand to gain from it.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Katie and CJ. The Tioga County study that you'd sent me months ago, CJ, was really, really helpful. I mean, it showed that it doesn't have to be a one size fits all kind of response. There are different levels of coordination. It certainly sounds like the shared software is maybe the low hanging fruit that could really help a lot of municipalities and maybe lead to additional collaborations. But as that study showed, it was really, you could tailor it to each municipality, and the study is actually meant to really survey and dig into what each municipality would benefit from. So that'll be the conversation at TCOG. We're not meaning to impose anything. This is just, to take time next year and really look at it and see what makes sense here. So anything, and the amount we put in the budget was $75,000. The Tioga County study was about $70,000. So that may be in the right ballpark. Any other questions about this or comments? I would mention that Terry Carroll, our Chief Sustainability Officer, wrote to me yesterday and said that he thought this was from the point of view of energy, the energy code and increased requirements coming from the state. He thought this would be a good opportunity, and this would have, there's some real advantages if we had, as the code gets more and more technical and getting into new technology that some folks may not be familiar with, that he thought this was a good time to be looking at this. So, all right. Well, thank you so much, CJ, for bringing this to us. Your comment at the Planning Advisory Board meeting, I think back in February, kind of got this on my list, and I'm really glad to be moving it forward. Things take time.
Thank you.
But we'll get there. All right. Thanks a lot. You're welcome to stay if you'd like.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks. All right. Do we have any committee member reports on things that are related to topics of the committee? All right. We can move on to Katie. Good morning.
Hi there, everybody. A few items for you. The broadband infrastructure survey RFP was released on October 20th. Proposals are due November 23rd to us. And again, that's to engage a vendor to provide local data on residential and commercial addresses in the county that do not have access to broadband internet using a wired connection, such as fiber or cable. We also, Nick and I had a conversation earlier this week with staff from ECC Technologies. That is the vendor that's working with the New York State Department of Public Service on statewide broadband physical infrastructure study. So there is a chance that they are doing the exact same thing that we have the RFP out to do right now for the entire state. And in fact, it looks like they're going to be wrapping up the physical driving of all of the roads of Tompkins County in the next couple of months. And so we may be on the same timeline with the same information. So Nick and I are trying to get a hold of the right people to talk to at the state level to find out whether we could get the information that we want in a publicly accessible format to serve our needs. So more to come on that. Luckily, we have a little bit of time to look into this before the RFP responses are even due. But I wanted to let people know that we're having those conversations right now.
Interesting.
Oh, go ahead. Do you want me to?
Yeah, that's
ask the
interesting.
question?
Yeah, that's interesting. They're doing the same thing we are. Okay, Henry, go ahead.
They're looking at the entire state for doing this,
Yep.
and they're going to finish soon.
Well, they're doing different areas at different times, but
Okay.
Tompkins, they have a chunk of Tompkins done already. So this is a two-part effort. One is this, you may have seen this survey that's being pushed out for people to check their internet speeds and provide information. So that's one component. And then the other is this physical infrastructure, driving all the roads in the state. They've got teams working all around the state right now, trying to get that information in place. I think, they recognize that there's a lot of money coming out to try to address broadband, and they're trying to position us well to be able to use that money effectively. Nick, did you want to add anything on that?
No, I think you covered it. I just wanted, just in case there were other questions. Yeah, we understand from ECC that this work is in progress. This is not, conceptual or, yet to be done. There are people doing this physical survey right now on their behalf. So the questions are really, how will we be able to use the data and see it? Because it's very possible that, there could be other restrictions in that way that, will make this so that, unfortunately, we would have to duplicate it to have a useful data set of our own. But those root questions still have to be resolved, and we're working through those.
Do we have a problem at all if we issue an RFP and then decide not to hire anybody?
I don't believe we're under any obligation to select a vendor following the RFP.
I mean, if we find out by November 23rd that we actually can use the state's data, we wouldn't need to do it ourselves.
That's my understanding is we're not on an obligation to choose one vendor out of this.
Okay. Henry.
Has any of the municipality gotten information from the state so far, since it's being done in stages? Have they released any other information about their services, about this study?
So we just learned about this on Monday. So we're still
Okay.
gathering information ourselves. I don't know if any other municipality that's gotten anything out of the state on this, and it's incomplete. So there may not be anything that they're willing to share until the data's been, vetted and reviewed and everything. So, not to my knowledge, I don't know if any other municipalities have gotten surveys. They did send us a very small sample of the responses to the online survey, just so we could kind of see what's coming in through that channel.
They did make a note that of all the responses they're seeing, people in Tompkins County are very angry about their internet relative to other areas, and they've had a very high response rate.
Yes, because when I always click on my internet, it never goes on above 20.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
they are wanting to launch this full website by, I think it was March that they were talking about. So they're in a fast timeline for this work.
Right. Our understanding of what PSC is eventually going to do is to have a tool on somewhere where you can plug in your address or any address, and it will tell you these are the providers that have service in your area, or you have no providers in your area. So if we're able to access sort of the back end information that's feeding that tool, then we would effectively have what we're looking for in our RFP.
And I will just clarify that they did say that it was likely that we could probably get the information on areas that are not served and have that publicly accessible, but areas that are served is considered, sharing that information there's some bad actors that could take advantage of that information and target us. So it's that's probably likely that we can't have that information, but we could have kind of the negative information of areas unserved.
That's really interesting if Tompkins County is a particular hotspot for anger about. I wonder if that's because of the demand or because of the supply. So, all right, thank you. Other topics for your report, Katie? We just interrupted, jumped in.
Sure, yeah. So also Megan and Susan put together some comments for NISAC. They were soliciting comments from counties on a proposed New York State accessory dwelling unit legislation. And they took a close look at what was being proposed and had several pages of comments on things from, defining terms and just unintended consequences that they might be wanting to think about in their legislation. I did notice that county planning departments across the state submitted comments as well. There's a lot of interest in the topic of ADUs, obviously. The staff, Megan, Susan, and I have all been invited to participate in New York State HCR's as stakeholders working on their next 5-year housing plan for New York State. And so it's a process with local stakeholders to seek feedback on existing state housing plan and propose new programs and strategies for the future. So I think that's a great opportunity. That starts on Friday. And then my last note was on the housing fund, the new round, which you covered already, Martha. So that's it.
Thanks very much, Katie. Megan or Susan, do you want to add anything?
Oh, I think we've got lots to come in the housing snapshot. So if there are any questions, though, we're happy to take them.
Okay, good. That housing plan too, I think I got invited. That starts next Friday, I think, not tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you so very much then. If we're ready to move on to the housing snapshot. I really hope people got a chance to read what we have in our packets. I've got notes all over here and a million questions. And, I want to talk to you about doing a presentation to the full legislature. This is really important. And I know we'll get a deeper dive here, but at least the top line takeaways, I think the full legislature and the community at large really need to hear. So thank you. I mean, this report that you do every year is always so meaty and so important. And I feel like this year you've outdone yourselves on the content that's in here. So thank you so much. So Meg, are you taking this or Susan?
No, this is Susan's hard work and she's done a great job. So
okay, I think it's going to be, yeah, it's going to be me. Unfortunately, my camera is not working for some reason, but we'll figure it out.
Okay.
So let me get the presentation up.
You can see just the black screen.
Just the black screen. All right, let's.
While you do that, Susan, I'll just share with the committee that it was really great having fresh eyes with Susan coming on board this year, and she really dove in and tried to her best to make the report interesting looking and more user-friendly for particularly our municipalities and our public to better understand our housing. So we appreciate her work on this.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks, Katie. All right, we see the slides, but not in presentation mode.
All right, we're just going to go with that just so that we can keep moving forward.
All right, fine. Thanks.
So the first thing that I want to point out is this is not meant to be an analytical report. It's meant to be, here's the trends that we've seen over the past 10 years. Here's what we're seeing in terms of housing strategy goals. So there's a lot of information and we talk about the trends, but it's not like a huge analytical report. So a couple of things on just some of the data. The impacts of COVID-19 are not going to be fully captured in this report. So we use both ACS data, the 2015 to 2019, and that obviously predates the pandemic. And then we do have a lot of decennial census data that came out in August, but a lot of that was likely impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, given that the start of the collection for that data was April 1st, 2020. So you'll see some maybe interesting and unexpected numbers related to population, housing counts, and vacancy. Just a few of the notes, ACS data is a 5-year collection. So it is an average over those previous 5 years of 2015 to 19, making it more precise, but not necessarily the most timely data. The large student population has a substantial impact on data in Tompkins County. And then the last bit, which is a little bit more specific to the county and local data, is that housing targets data. We do use assessment data using property class codes, but sometimes that data in those class codes shifts, like if something's in the middle of construction and then a year later it's completed. So sometimes the units are will change. So there may be a few discrepancies between previous housing snapshots. So we'll start off with just the basic demographic and housing trends. Between 2010 and 2020, the county added 4,176 people. We saw the senior population continue to grow as a proportion of the total population, from 10.8% of the population in 2010 to 13.9% in 2019. For the same period, the under 18 population actually declined from 16.4% of the population to 14.9%. Median household income growth from 2010 to 2019 has outpaced inflation growth. However, that does not exist across all breakdowns of that. You've seen actually median household income for renters decline by 6%, but for homeowners, it has increased. We've seen an increase in the number of commuters into the county by about 9.5%. So adding over 1,000, about 1,300 commuters between 2010 and 2019. Again, ACS data, there are margins of error. So just be mindful that these are not full 100% numbers. So one of the trends that was often talked about during COVID-19 was the people moving out of major metro areas into smaller communities. So I was able to locate some data that compared 2019 and 2020 USPS change of address requests. And in looking at just those 2 years, Tompkins County did see an increase between 2019 and 2020 of 118 more households coming into the county in 2020. However, and you can see in that chart that New York City, Newark, Jersey City, Binghamton, and Syracuse metro areas were the largest where people were moving from the most. So in 2020, for example, you had 495 change of address requests from New York City to Tompkins County, which is an increase from 2019. But when you look at all of the change of address requests, it's just an increase of 118 households from between 2019 and 2020. However, one thing to note with this data is all data with the county is you actually see move outs greater than move ins. So in 2019, we saw 746 more change of address requests to move out of the county than move in. That number decreased in 2020 to 559. One thing that I would note is this data does not often include students or international populations who may not file change of address request forms. So you'll likely have people moving into the county that are not filing those. So we can't really get a sense of how many people are moving out, but maybe you have students that have been living off campus, their junior and senior years, and they're filing requests when they leave. So to get a little bit more into housing, the total number of housing units in the county increased by about 5,200 to a total of 46,844. At the same time, we saw the number of vacant housing units increase by about 70% from 2,700 to almost 4,600 in 2020. Because of that vacant housing unit increase, we saw that there was a lower occupancy rate. So in 2020, 90.1% of all housing units were occupied compared to 93.5% in 2010. This is the decennial census data. Again, as I noted, likely impacted by COVID-19. Breaking down a little bit of that population increase, they do break it down into population that moves into occupied housing units and population that lives in group quarters. So places like dorms, nursing homes, correctional facilities, et cetera. And so between 2010 and 2020, you did see the group quarters population increase by about 1,200 people, and the population in occupied units grew by 2,900. However, as we note, the housing units increased by 5,200, but only 3,300 occupied housing units. So looking at that, you had more housing units than people and those housing units grow. And I think this is just an indication of a trend that we've seen of you having smaller households. So you're still needing the housing units because you're just having smaller households than what we were having 10, 20, 30 years ago. So cost burden continues to be a substantial challenge in the county, particularly for renters. So for those who spend 30% or more of their income on housing costs, for renter households, 55% of renter households in the county are cost burdened. And that's increased since 2010 from 51.9%. Owner occupied households, actually it's decreased. So still owner occupied households, and this is ones with a mortgage and without a mortgage, 18% are cost burdened, which is down from 23.4% in 2010. Severe cost burden, this is when you're spending more than 50% of your income on housing costs. Renter households, again, it's increased since 2010 from 28.7 to 34.1%. Owner occupied households has seen a slight decrease. We're at 7.2% right now, spend more than 50% of their income. Just looking at some of the housing cost trends, this is using Ithaca Board of Realtors data. The median sales price for a home in 2020 was $255,000, which is a $25,000 increase since 2019. And just looking at this chart, that's about a 9.9% increase actually since 2018, which we've seen that all counties surrounding Tompkins have seen that increase, noting that 2020 is a significant jump from the previous years. So it is not just an issue that is affecting Tompkins County, it's affecting the entire region. At the same time, we've seen the month supply of inventory. So like how long it would take to sell the existing inventory of houses for sale decline from an average of 3.3 months in 2018 to 1.5 months. So with the current, for 2020, with that current supply of average inventory, it would have just taken 1.5 months to sell all of those units. So again, indicating severe shortages of units, particularly on the for sale side. Rent, similar to the for sale units, we saw increases in rents between 2010 and 2020. And this is based on median rent data. So between 34.3% and 18.7%, like we saw all sizes of units increase over that period. Whereas 3-bedroom units, that was that increase of 34.3% in total rent, whereas studios saw the smallest increase at 18.7%. What I will note though, is between 2010 and 2015, you saw much higher growth rates than you did between 2016 and 2020, except for those studios. So it does look like rent growth did slow in the second half of the decade. However, I would note in looking at current data for 2021 and projected 2022 data, it looks like that pace of rent growth is starting to pick up again. And just as a note, to afford a median rent for 1 bedroom, in this community, a household would need to earn $42,880 a year. And that's to keep the housing costs below that 30% threshold. And so now we'll get into some more specific data to the county. And this is using some of the housing, this is trying to analyze the housing strategy targets. And so the county has mixed success on things. We've seen some growth and real progress in student units, for example, but also still have a long ways to go in really helping to meet some of those targets set forth. So since 2016, and I use 2016 as that base year of when the Danter study was done, you've seen about 2,469 units developed, the majority of which are apartment units. For multifamily development and just grouping these by apartments and duplexes, 1,994 units, single family development, manufactured homes, and things that are clearly classified single family in the assessor's data, 475 units. And you can see just from year to year, 2017, 2018, 2019 had substantial multifamily growth. For single family, 2018 was the best year and then slowed in 2019 and 2020. So not adding a lot of single family units to the market in the past couple of years. And then for multifamily in 2020, obviously had some major barriers to construction and bringing more units online. So getting into some of the more specific goals. So in the housing strategy, some of the targets were set, meeting an existing deficit of 100 to 200 subsidized senior apartments, 1 Medicaid assisted facility, and then market rate housing to be determined based on future vacancies and wait lists. So just in terms of the total units added under the senior housing, 139 since 2016, 71 of which are market rate. Based on current proposals that I was able to locate, we do have about 152 new units proposed over the next couple of years. All of those are market rate. To the best of my knowledge, there's been no movement on a Medicaid assisted living facility in the county.
Susan, if I can just
Yeah.
break in a second.
Please.
Yeah, if Lisa Holmes is still on here, she remembers we had sort of lobbied at the state level on this several years ago. I checked in with Lisa Monroe last night, and she said that as of August 2019, the state did put out an application process, an RFA process, and Cayuga Ridge applied, the only provider in Tompkins County. And we had expected to hear back in February or March of 2020. We'd expected, hoped to get approval. And then she said something happened in March 2020, which I can't remember what it was, but so everything ground to a halt. But Lisa Monroe will check on that. So
Thank you for that update. Supportive housing and special needs was another goal from the housing strategy. So 100 beds of permanent supportive housing and 100 single room occupancy beds reserved for under 30% AMI. Total new units, we've had 32 supportive housing units come online, 4 SRO beds, but do have about 145 units. I'm not exactly sure on the number of beds that are active or proposed that will be coming online this year and next year. Lakeview, for example, is one of those in that active and proposed units. Workforce housing. So we had 2 workforce housing goals, both related to ownership and renter. So for the ownership side, the goal was 380 new ownership units per year through 2025, broken down into having them 300 single family units between certain price range, and then 80 condos. Couldn't really break down the single family homes and the condominiums, so just kind of grouped those together based on the available data. As noted, we have about 475 added units. Of those, between the 150,000 and 199, 58 total. The goal was 90 units per year between that. Housing at the 200,000 plus level, 359. And so the median assessed value for these 475 units was $265,000. For the rental housing, we have difficulty in getting the exact AMI percentages. So just trying to get a sense of what are income restricted, what are market rate. And so as the goal was 200 new rental units per year, up to that 100%. What we definitely know is we've had about 1,994 come online. 213 of those are income restricted. 1,708 new market rate rental units, but a substantial number of those are student oriented. So when taking out the student oriented, we have about 860 new non-student oriented market rate units coming online. Student beds was another goal of this strategy. So to meet the existing deficit of 1,400 to 1,500 on or off campus beds, and then add beds to meet increases in enrollment. So the estimated number of student beds added since 2016, about 1,200. An approximate deficit of 2,000 beds in accordance with the increase in enrollment remains. 550 housing units and over 2,000 beds are expected to come online this year and beyond. So North Campus expansion, which came online this year, is not included in that estimated number of student beds, since this only goes through 2020. So there's been a substantial amount of progress really on that student side and helping to meet some of those demands. And then my last part is just one of the other parts of the housing strategy is really thinking about the development focus areas and encouraging development in those. And so the goal was to have at least 350 units, excluding student beds, in the urban center, 500 to 100 units in established and emerging nodes, 30 in rural centers, and then 100 and 150 in other suburban locations. So this has been overwhelmingly successful. Of the units we've had built, almost 1,900 of them have been built in one of the development focus areas. The urban center, about 1,600 of those units have been built in there, mainly because a lot of them are apartments, and that is going to be the primary location for those. Established nodes have seen 120 units, emerging 84 in rural centers. The one thing that I will say is that the single family units are not necessarily being built in the DFAs. About 23% of single family units were built in the DFAs, whereas almost 90% of multifamily units were built in the DFAs. So there is a substantial difference in the types of units that are being built in these development focus areas. All right, I've thrown a lot of information at you, and I'm happy to answer any questions, comments, not just today, but beyond.
Right, if you want to stop sharing your screen.
Yep,
and
absolutely.
So thank you so very, very much. And I really encourage everybody, including anybody on the whole legislature, to read through the subsequent pages, which have lots more detail too, lots more digging into it, including on income, which I think is like a really, one of the items that I really was looking at. Questions, comments from legislators? All right, I'll dive in. Once upon a time, we bought, it might be after the 2010 census, we actually paid extra to get a data set that separated the student population out. And I can't remember how much it cost, but it seemed like it was a useful thing given the dynamics here. Is that something that's still available, and is that something you're considering?
And this is a conversation that Megan and I have had, and whether or not that's still available, I'm not 100% sure, since a lot of methodologies have changed since the 2010 census. I know that there needs to be some additional closer analysis to make sure that housing units and things are still accurate based on local knowledges, because you can still file a request from the census to review some of the 2020 data. But I do think that that is something that we have definitely talked about and trying to figure out if that's needed to have a better sense of the nuance of the market. And Megan, Katie, please jump in.
Well, I would just say that we have periodically looked into this and had these discussions. I see Fernando's on the call as well, because in the past, we shared the cost with them to do the breakout of the students. And my recollection is the last time we looked at it, they had raised the price on it very significantly to do the breakouts. And I believe you couldn't compare the data to the last breakout. There was some problem with the data, but if Megan or Fernando, you remember more detail, please let me know.
And I think Amy is noting that she's had this experience too, that I believe for 2020, kind of the key question that allows that separation was not asked. So it's not looking like that's going to be an option. Even in the years where it was an option, there's a significant time lag, I think, before you can even see what you can request. But Fernando may know more of those details as well.
I would say we looked at this after 2010, and the cost was prohibitive. Where we did this the first breakdown we did was in the vicinity of $8,000. What they wanted in 2010 was over 40,000, and it was just a little too much for everybody to consider participating. We really have not, at least my group, we have not looked at doing that breakout for 2020, but there are some data issues that may make it really not as useful an exercise.
Okay, it might be, in fact, probably more relevant if we just can get good data from the colleges on their enrollment. And I think that's one of the gaps. We have not always gotten current good information, and including on, in particular, Cornell, the big elephant in the room, on, I believe they are about to increase enrollment. Their pledge had been, when they started the housing initiative on North Campus, their pledge had been that they would only increase enrollment when they had housing units to match. So it'd be great to know if that's actually the plan. The other part is that increasing graduate students and professional students actually has perhaps as much of a direct impact, because those folks live in the community, not on campus so much. And so those are also numbers that we should track. So maybe rather than going through the data set with the census system. It's maybe better just to try to nail down Cornell's plans. Annie, go ahead.
Thank you for this presentation and everybody, who contributed to this. And Susan, so there's so much information here. I'm still trying to digest this. I started looking at this late last night and got through about half of it, and it's just very astounding. So one of the many things that jumped out at me was that renters' income was reduced over this period from 34,400 to 32,400, so decreasing by an average of $2,000, and that to not be rent burdened for a 1-bedroom, you'd need to have a median or an income of 42,800, which is 10,000 more than the average a single renter is making. So it's just astounding to me. So one question that I have right now is that, are the affordable units, maybe it's in here and I'm not seeing it, are the affordable units that we have included in here?
Yep. So any affordable units that were developed between 2016 and 2020 are included in there. I do not have a specific breakdown for, this is a number of units reserved for a certain AMI group, but anything that is, income restricted, I believe those 213 units are in that.
So that's included in that. So,
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I think this is something we'll be, looking at over the next 6 months to a year. I think this committee just trying to digest this and seeing how to help you and see what we can do and what the planning department and the municipalities can do to help address this. So thank you very much.
And one thing that I would note about that is, there are a number of developments that are coming online this year, next year, and in 2023, a lot of which do include affordable units. So I think that we will hopefully see some changing of those metrics going forward, and that, there will be affordable units available to these households. Just based on this period, there wasn't a lot of development in that, and a lot of that, can be tied back to things that should have come online last year that were delayed.
Right. And just one more note, just, if the renter's average income is down to 32,400, just want to make note and say it out loud that there's a lot of people that are below that threshold, that make below that are really struggling here. So thank you.
Yeah, I noted, Annie, when as I was reading the more detailed section here, I kind of got to the point where oh God, it takes so much added supply to reduce the rents. What if we just could get people's income up? And then the next page was about median incomes and what people are able to afford at, different job categories specifically. And so that's in here. It's really an excellent analysis here. I wanted to ask about vacancies, and you said the census was probably really picked up the vacancies where people, the students moved back home or whatever in March and April of 2020. How much do you think that really, because the vacancy rate really surprised me. And how are short-term rentals, this is the segue to Nick's report next, but how are short-term rentals a part of this picture? If something is, say, full-time, a short-term rental, that's a housing unit, but there's no resident there. How is that counted?
Sure. So I'll start with that. For the short-term rentals, that is counted as a vacant unit. Typically, the census data, and hopefully it will come out later this year as well, is that vacant units are divided into categories. So you could have a vacant unit that is currently for sale or for rent, or a vacant unit that is a seasonal, which is where short-term rentals would fall. So we don't have that vacant unit breakdown yet. So it's from the census data, we don't know. my best guess about why you saw that 70% increase to 2,700 units is I do think that units that were counted from April 1 and then beyond to get that point in time count, they were likely student units. I mean, you did see that, Ithaca, the city of Ithaca and the town of Ithaca had dramatic increases in their vacant units, which would make sense with that kind of hypothesis. So I think it is just a matter of they were occupied and then the pandemic hit, and when the counting occurred, they were not.
Okay.
That sort of tracks with what we heard anecdotally too. I mean, landlords, particularly, around Cornell University, were very panicked, like April and May of last year, seeing massive vacancies. And later in the year, that story completely flipped on its head. So it may have just been perfectly bad timing.
Okay. And then you said on sort of the other way of looking at vacancies is either it's a seasonal property or it's on the market temporarily vacant because it's turning over. That's the idea.
Yeah. And so the census data, if I remember correctly, has like 5 categories. So it's like for rent, for rent not occupied, for sale not occupied, seasonal, or other. So other could be, it's a dilapidated unit, etc. We don't have that data yet. It's not been released from the census, so we can't really do that breakdown and then see how it maybe compares with the data that Nick's been gathering through the short-term rental program. So I think once that data is released, that will be an interesting comparison for us to do to see how much census data lines up with the information that he's been gathering.
Okay. All right, great. So basically we think probably that vacancy rate is an overstatement of that was a temporary glitch. And
I really do believe that it was a temporary glitch just based, on what the anecdotal data is and where the vacant units really increased.
Okay. So as I said, I wanted to really encourage us to get you on the schedule for the full legislature. When we do that, and I want to encourage people to really look at, the way you've analyzed this, sort of tracking our targets, where we with the housing strategy in 2017, we actually said, these are our targets. And you're literally tracking, benchmarking those. I've always had a little bit of a problem translating between annual and 5-year goals or 10-year goals. And I would encourage you to really make those more consistent. You actually said that in one of your comments just now about, that's 90 per year, but that's that your total was 58, I think, over 5 years, where our goal is 90 per year. You can make that more, like multiply 5 times 90, then the gap hits you in the face of, yeah, we're building a lot, but we keep falling farther and farther behind is kind of the big takeaway. And I think if you kind of made those numbers consistent, that'd be helpful.
Absolutely.
So
I can do that.
Okay. Terrific. Maybe I can get on the phone with you later about some of my other questions too, because this is really such an important report and really extremely well done. Anything else from the committee? All right. Thank you so much, Susan. I'm sure Megan, you were working on this too, and other staff. So
Martha, can I ask one question?
Yeah.
I just wanted to invite committee members or anybody else who's on this call to share ideas on how to make this clearer, because it is a lot of data, it's a lot of information. So we're all ears. We're trying to improve how we communicate this stuff. So any ideas you have, please send them our way.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. All right, to the next study that's kind of ongoing, Nick Helmholt and the short-term rental monitoring. We did get a memo kind of late yesterday from Jonathan Wood related to this, but go ahead, Nick.
Hi there.
Hi.
I'm going to try to do a screen share.
We've got it, but it's not in presentation. There you go. Perfect.
Okay. Okay. Looking good?
Yes, good.
Great. All right. Thanks for give me a few minutes this morning here to talk about short-term rentals. I'll give you kind of a quick summary. We're calling it an initial analysis of short-term rentals. Try to compile a lot of data here to give the committee an overview of what we know about this topic in the county. So, but before we kind of dive into that, why do we care about short-term rentals? And maybe for the spectator, what are they? We think of short-term rentals as residential units that are used for transitory lodging for periods of 30 days or less. So this is not your typical lease arrangement. They can be a part of a home, such as a spare bedroom or a unit that's separated within a home, or an entire home, or not even a home at all, potentially something that's more like a tent or a boat. These vacation rentals more generally have been around for a long time, but in the recent years, popular websites like Airbnb, VRBO, and others have allowed guests to reserve rooms much more easily than they had in the past. So from the county's perspective, why do we care about this topic? Number one is our county's hotel room occupancy tax, which is at 5% per night for any occupancy in a unit of under 30 days. We currently have a voluntary collection agreement with Airbnb for remittance of this tax, but the other STR platforms, we do not have that. So the hosts themselves are responsible for collecting and remitting that. So that's the number one concern is checking if these folks are in compliance with that county law. Number two, as we just discussed, is the question of this impact on affordable housing. There's been, I'd say, curiosity in whether or not this is a factor in the contributing to our county's, affordable housing issues, and questions about what that magnitude is. Really at the sort of trying to get a grasp of the problem stage for that. Number three is related to health and safety. For a traditional hotel or motel is a commercial unit and is subject to different building codes relating to fire egress and other health codes. Residential units, of course, are not subject to those types of codes. Number four is sales tax. There's actually an exemption for, I think, what are technically called bungalow units in the state tax law, sales tax law, where if you log on to Airbnb, you'll notice that your invoice does not include the standard sales tax. And that's not unique to Airbnb, that is all the short-term rentals. As the market shifts more toward a preference for this type of a lodging unit, we may experience a change in our sales tax collection respectively. And number five here, the topic we probably hear the most about in our own communities and neighborhoods is concerns about short-term rentals as being potentially bad neighbors. Excess noise, crowding, parking, loss of sense of community are topics that are often raised in these conversations regarding short-term rentals. So those are sort of the core reasons I think we have interest in this topic and are continuing to monitor it. So the data we're going to go through in this report is going to come from three sources. The vast majority of it is coming from the LTAS Technologies, or HARMARI. This is a service that does monitoring of short-term rentals. It's basically collecting information daily, scanning the major platforms, Airbnb and so forth, to harvest data on each listing. It automatically updates that as it collects new information. This was the service that we entered into a agreement with following the shared service agreement. Shared service plan proposal to investigate short-term rentals. The second source is called All the Rooms. And this is more market information that's gathered monthly. It's comparable to what we get on the hotel side, which is a service called Smith Travel Reports. So this looks more at occupancy and rates, and only looks at Airbnb and VRBO, which are the top two platforms in the county. And the third source is our own fine team over at the county finance department and our quarterly room tax reports, which are very helpful in looking at this topic as well, as it breaks down the revenue from lodging properties with 10 or fewer rooms, which are roughly comparable to short-term rentals. All right, so the first piece of data that I want to share here is regarding listings. You can think of, when I use the word listing, you can think of it like advertisement. A listing is not necessarily a unique unit, but it's like a posting out somewhere in the web for somebody to stay at your short-term rental. And when we look at our listings and looking through the Harmari data, over 82% of our listings come from either Airbnb or Vrbo. And the vast majority, as you can see, come from Airbnb. Nearly is 70% of our listings. So, we're clearly, there's clearly one large player in the Tompkins County market. In one sense, this is good news in that our voluntary collection agreement should be, catching a lot of that through Airbnb. On the other hand, there's still a healthy chunk there of listings that we need to consider in terms of whether they're in compliance with the hotel occupancy tax law. One other thing to note about this is that these are not necessarily unique. There is duplication. A individual short-term rental could be listed on 2 or more websites. So we'll get to deduplication in just a few minutes. Next, looking into the Harmari data, we were able to break down some more data and get a sense of what the average unit sort of looks like. And sort of at the middle of the pack, the average unit has 1.8 bedrooms and allows 5.2 guests. This is sort of the middle. There's definitely some outliers on the upper ends of this where we have larger properties. So this is, kind of, I think, helpful and instructive in thinking about what these units look like on the ground. I'm going to go through this onion diagram here to kind of help understand and unpack what the sort of scope of short-term rentals looks like in the county. So at the very top, the very large number is 1,930 total listings. Again, listings you can think of like advertisements. This is like total number of ads. If you scrape everything off of all these websites, there's 1,930 of them. When you take out the ones that are inactive, that have not been, allowing guests or been posted recently, that number drops down to 1,409. So Harmari classifies a listing as inactive if it's been unavailable 30% or less of the time in its recent scans. Then you can comb out the ones that are duplicates. And that, when you get down to just the unique listings, so you've combed out all the duplicates, you get down to 1,154 active and unique listings in the county. Next, you're going to comb out the ones that are non-residential. And this is, as I mentioned earlier, there are things on Airbnb and other websites which never would be used as a residential unit. So things like, tents or boats, even some inns and bed and breakfast units that are more in the traditional space are listing on websites like Airbnb just to get in front of more potential customers. So you take out all those commercial and other uses and you get down to 792 active and unique residential listings. Finally, looking at just entire housing units, taking out all of the ones that are shared home where you have, a spare bedroom or a part of somebody's home that's being used, you get now down to 653 active, unique, and residential listings that are for an entire housing unit throughout the county. So I think that gives a little bit of perspective on the numbers overall within, how many housing units are being used for short-term rentals. So how does that compare to what we have on file for county finance? So if you just look at the number of active and unique short-term rentals, there were 1,154, and total number of lodging properties that are registered with the finance department are 137. Now, there's a big caveat here is that we do not require Airbnb units that are exclusively on Airbnb to register with the county. So we need to filter that out. And I haven't had time to look into that, and will require some time to sit down with the finance department to go through that process. But certainly it appears that there's some room here for some properties that are, potentially not in compliance and not registered with the county that are currently operating short-term rentals. Looking at the economic performance of these units, this is some data from all the rooms that's current through This is as of September of this year. Airbnb and VRBO, the average occupancy is between 25 and 19%, roughly. This is for a 12-month period ending in September. And that's substantially below where we see occupancy averages for our hotels and motels traditionally. So there's a lower occupancy, and if you just translate into that in the nights per year, it's between 70 and 91 nights per year. And then looking at the average daily rate, which is how much people pay on average for a night, we see those range from $171 to $351 per night. And that's actually a healthy amount higher than you see for hotels and motels. And part of that is the premium of, many of these locations have multiple bedrooms and other amenities that you just generally don't see in hotels. So it's a little more a variety, and I think some of those higher outliers pull that average up for the average rates. So the next part here I'm going to show is a couple of maps, and there's two maps that are going to look back at some of that data we're talking about. The first one here is looking at just the active, unique, and residential short-term rentals. So this includes everything, whether it's a spare bedroom in somebody's house or a whole house that's being used as a short-term rental throughout the county. And you can see there's a pretty wide variety of distinction between the different towns. This is just mapping based on municipalities within Tompkins County, all the towns and villages in the city of Ithaca. You can see, at the low end, you have a few places that have between 5 and roughly a dozen short-term rentals. In the high end, you have the city of Ithaca with over 240 short-term rentals in the city. And if you filter this down to just look at entire housing units, the map basically looks almost the same, just a little less. You filter out all those shared units and you see the same basic distribution of where housing units are being used as short-term rentals.
Nick, excuse me. So that could be an apartment, but it's the whole apartment is a short-term. Okay.
That's true. It could be an apartment. It's not necessarily a detached housing. This is just the entire unit. So,
got it.
Yep. We haven't done a whole bunch more analysis on this. We can look at this in through different lenses, looking at comparing to different census data or housing data that we have on file at the county. Our just sort of first take on it is that it seems to roughly approximate distribution of housing with a few exceptions, or not huge ones though. So we're starting to look into that a little more deeply. Next steps for us regarding short-term rentals, we're going to continue to collect this data through Harmari. That agreement goes for 12 months. We're going to be looking at this, making a big extract every month to have as a part of this analysis. And continuing to monitor that situation. We'll be working with the finance department and looking at hotel room occupancy taxes, potentially considering other voluntary collection agreements with VRBO, as that may be a fruitful way to address delinquents or non-registration. Housing affordability. I think our big question is sort of what are the questions we need to answer on this? How do we approach this topic? We're sort of at the stage where we're starting to get enough data to be able to answer those questions, but we don't necessarily know what they all are. And finally, supporting municipalities. And this is in reference to the memo you saw earlier. We're coming up with some different strategies to support municipalities. The approach we initially outlined in the shared service plan is going to have to be rethought a bit, as it's we're going through some of the final stages of figuring out how that works. So that's basically all I have on short-term rentals, and I'm happy to answer any questions the committee has.
Thank you very much, Nick. I don't know what you're doing in your spare time. You have so many topics for us. Henry, go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Nick. You said that Hamari is a 12-month study. Do you know what time frame is included in your data so far?
Well, so everything I presented with regard to Harmari was basically a snapshot in time as of October 1st. I did a big extract of the whole system and ran a bunch of numbers as of that date. We'll be doing that the first of the month through the end of our agreement with them, which I believe will run through this summer. So I have to double check the date though. I think June.
Okay, so information like on commencement time isn't in it yet.
No, not. They have some historic data. They can scrape back. You know, when you find an Airbnb listing, you can scrape back to see. Okay, hey, there's all these reviews, and the reviews are dated often. You can see, you know, Julie left a review in September, and James left a review in July, and you can go back through, so you can kind of see some of that, but it's not terribly detailed. We'll get much more detailed information as we're going forward here.
You said through June 2022?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Other committee members? And Jonathan's memo really was about sharing how detailed information, how much detail can we share with municipalities, with the caveat about preserving confidentiality. The issue of how many nights per year is interesting. I remember seeing, this is a while back, I think it was pre-COVID, realtors, for example, had figured out that if they bought up a property that was going to be a good short-term rental, that if they rented it only, I think the number was something like 83 nights out of the year, you could break even. You sort of basically pay for itself with only 83 nights a year, give or take, if you actually purchased a house, let's say. So if you said that the nights per year average for Airbnb was 91 and VRBO was 70, so that's kind of around that ballpark. So I mean, that's where I'm, really concerned about this effect on housing. If people see an economic opportunity and that's kind of purely what it is, and that pulls those units out. I mean, even 240 units in the city, that's kind of like a whole big apartment building that we just built solely for rentals, so solely for short-term rentals. So that's,
I mean, it would be the
that matters.
largest hotel if it was all under one roof. It'd be the largest hotel in the city.
right. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, there's the impact on the hotel market, but also on on housing. I do feel I think there may be an effort at the state level to rationalize this, especially upstate. I think the city of New York doesn't want, is sort of against any state regulation charging sales tax on these rentals, but upstate there's a movement. It's kind of the opposite movement. So I'm hoping that legislation might pass next year that would kind of rationalize this and make it easier, so that every planning department in every county doesn't have to have this fight individually, because it seems it's only fair if they pay the same kind of taxes. So
totally agree.
Okay, Henry.
Yes, Nick, are you able to basically do the analysis on a deeper level in terms of the municipalities? Are you able to do it based on neighborhoods?
So we have exact locations for most of these units that have, there are analysts at Harmari who, review these and identify the exact locations. Where we have to be careful is, addressing this concern that Jonathan raised in his memo of relaying potentially sensitive information. So it depends on the granularity of that scale, but yeah, potentially.
Okay.
All right, and so full disclosure, our family often uses Airbnb because of the whole idea of you can have a whole family, of kitchen, et cetera. But and we certainly don't have a complaint about people who are trying to supplement their income. And many people say just pay their property tax by renting out a room, that sort of thing. It's sort of the larger concern is about these other impacts. So, well, anything else for Nick? All right, this is great information, Nick. Thank you so much. It's really important to have actual data. So this is great. So thank you. All right, welcome to Heather McDaniel. I see you're lurking there too on your in your box. Hi, Heather. Good morning.
Hi. I came early so I could see the housing snapshot. Really great data.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Like for data junkies, it's like this is catnip, huh? So.
That's right. Okay, I have a couple of slides I'm going to share with you. Let's see. How's that? Can you see that?
That was good. Thank you.
Okay. The waterfall's way more fun to look at than looking at my face. I just wanted to give you some updates. You do have in your packet our regular monthly report. Also in the packet is a memo that we provide annually on our year-end fund balance at the IDA and Tompkins County Development Corporation. I thought I would just add to that a little bit. Here's a slide that shows the fund balance in blue each year for the IDA dating back to 1988, and then also the revenue, basically the fees we collect on projects that have been approved each year. So just to give you a little bit of a snapshot that fund balance and that revenue number does tend to vary year to year. It's not like an organization that has sort of a stable revenue model. It's really based on the number of projects and what we're seeing. Some of these significant jumps in revenue, of course, have been the work that we have done with the city of Ithaca to increase density and vibrancy downtown. In your memo, I do note our year-end 2020 fund balance was $940,712, less our contractual obligations for 2021, including IAD's operating support. We set aside some funding to do grants for childcare organizations as a result of COVID. We'd participated in a feasibility study for an accelerator project up at Chainworks. And then we helped to pay for some of the labor skills mapping project that the Workforce Development Board did. So our available balance for this year was $335,883, which is below that $600,000 threshold that triggers me reporting to you. However, full disclosure, I'm reporting anyway, because I think it's important to keep this information current. So that was our year-end 2020 balance. In 2021, we are seeing significant fees being paid on projects that are closing, including the Ironworks project down on State Street, the Ithaca and the Asteri project, both of those on Green Street. I think we're teed up to close on some of the Carpenter Park projects this year. So when I report next year, which should be probably April, May, when we have our audit done and all of that, and I can report on 2021 year end, I am anticipating that there will be a significant jump in revenue as well as fund balance to the tune of maybe $2 million. I think it's really a testament to the work that the IDA has done to support community development downtown. But we did have 3 manufacturers that did expansions this past year as well. So that's really good news. The IDA is aware of this. They see the budget reports every quarter, and we will in November start to discuss, what legally the IDA can do as a public authority with its fund balance and start identifying things that we might want to support that would grow our economy. So more to come on that. I don't know what happened to my thing there. Let's try again. Ooh.
So you weren't finished on your slides.
No.
All right.
But something happened.
While you think about it, I meant to ask to have the staffs, all those slides emailed to us. The housing snapshot is within our packet. If we could get those slides emailed separately, and Nick, if we could get your slides emailed to us as well, that would be that'd be great. And Heather, I'll say the same thing once you get yours figured out. Thank you, Nick. See that in chat. Do you want to?
Okay, let's see.
I see it there on the left.
How's that?
Yeah, we're back to the beginning.
Okay, there we go.
All right, great.
A couple of things I wanted to update on with the IDA. This year, we're engaging in a review of our workforce housing policy that was adopted in August of 2020. In just the first year, we have approved 5 projects under the policy. The new policy that was put in place does require for any project that is developing housing that either 20% of their units be set aside as affordable units and for a long-term period, or they can pay into the Community Housing Development Fund, a dollar amount per total units in the project. So we've seen 5 projects approved, over 1,000 housing units to be built. About 25% of those are affordable. I will say this data was accurate as of yesterday. Today, I'm getting a little bit of information on one of our projects that we have not yet closed on, has reduced some of the market rate units. So housing units may go down by about 30 or 40 units. And of course, that percentage of affordable units will go up. $2.7 million is going into that Community Housing Development Fund, and we have given projects the option of either paying up front. We will have one later this year, probably in November, closing the McKinley project, the project in my parking lot at 401 East State Street that will contribute at closing a little over $1.6 million into that fund. The other projects opted to pay over 3 years during the first 3 years of operations. So once construction is done, they'll be able to pay out of their operating revenue. And as part of that policy review, what we're looking at doing at the committee level is making recommendations to prohibit short-term rentals in any IDA-approved housing project. Understanding better and aligning our policy with the local subsidy that's needed for the 4% low-income housing tax credit projects. So that may mean increasing our fee in lieu payment, particularly for those projects. Expanding to include the development focus areas. Right now, the IDA is only delivering assistance to mixed-use, multi-story residential development in the downtown core, which includes the downtown area of the city of Ithaca, the West End, the waterfront. So lots of great work going on there. Another thing that we're doing is reviewing our construction labor policy. This year, it's been in place since I think about 2016. And so we started this year with a committee reviewing some of the background data of the projects that have been completed over the past since we put the policy in place. They're averaging about 63% local construction labor on their projects. We've reviewed other policies of other IDAs and tried to understand how they're tracking and monitoring data and you know what their policies are requiring. We've gathered input and interviewed many of the local developers, general contractors, and the trades. The committee actually met again this week, and we're just finalizing some recommendations that will go to the IDA in November. We're going to require a 75% local construction labor. We define that as Tompkins and surrounding counties as our local sort of catchment area. All projects will be required to notify the Building Trades Council of their project and the incentives that they're receiving so that there can be more information back and forth in terms of the bid process. There will be a waiver for specific kinds of work, if it's warranty issues, if there's a significant cost differential between local and non-local bidders, if there's a need to, if they're receiving state incentives and they need to use a percentage of MWBE and veteran contractors and they can't find those locally, there needs to be documentation. The waiver process will be a form that's filled out. The Labor Committee will actually review it and make determinations on a case-by-case basis. The new recommended policy is also encouraging local use of local suppliers, local vendors, and using apprenticeship programs. The committee is going to continue to look at the potential of a requirement around apprenticeship programs to really support that pipeline of the next generation of the workforce in the trades. Another thing in the packet that you received is our drafted 2022 work plan for Ithaca area economic development. I thought I'd just give a high-level overview. These are our main core activities that we do day in and day out, year in and year out, around direct services, managing the IDA, the Development Corporation, our revolving loan fund program, and other direct services to businesses. Our other core activities around workforce development, engaging with our partners and really helping to develop that connection between local employers and people that are looking for work. To really strengthen those companies and make sure we're able to retain and grow companies here. We provide economic development leadership at the county, the regional, the state, and even the international level, particularly region-wide on infrastructure issues and other issues that impact the ability of us to retain and attract talent as well as companies right here in Ithaca and Tompkins County. Business retention, expansion, and attraction. On the business retention and attraction the business retention and expansion side, we regularly meet with businesses. We had a goal this year of meeting with, I think, 50 businesses, just to maintain relationships. Economic development is relational. It is not transactional. To understand their needs, it really informs the direct services, the workforce development, the economic development leadership activities that we engage in based on what we hear from businesses on a really regular basis. And then internal talent and culture, that's really our back office, our board, our internal things that we work on to make sure that we're functioning internally and externally. So those are sort of our core activities, and you can see in our proposed work plan, it's the stuff that we do every year, day in and day out, that really makes up the core of our work plan. And then we also have every year, we identify through our small but mighty team of 5 special projects. You'll note in your agenda packet, there were 13 special projects. It's October, we can go with 13, but our planning committee met yesterday at IAED, not yesterday, but earlier this week, and added a couple more. So we now have 15. I highlighted those in orange here on my slide, but these are sort of the projects that we want to elevate. They're new projects or continuing projects that are in addition to our, sort of everyday activities. The IDA continues to be extremely busy. We'll complete that workforce housing policy update. We are going to update our enhanced energy incentive policy to make sure that it it jives with the city's new green building code, so that we're providing incentives for developers that will go above and beyond what the existing code is requiring. We're going to review and identify opportunities to invest in growth and development through the IDA's fund balance. We will be adding that workforce team staff member and integrating that into our business services, our direct services programming, really focused on helping the employers to do everything that they can to retain and attract talent. We will be continuing work on our broadband grant that we got in Lansing. We just put out an RFP with a consultant to identify a partner that will construct and manage that line for us. It's a 17-mile line going from Dryden up to the old power plant in Lansing. Also continuing to provide broadband leadership at the regional level, working with County Planning Department as well as ST8. And I've been saying this for years, the Chainworks facility is really our largest redevelopment opportunity I think any of us will ever see in our lifetimes. 0.4 miles from Margaritas at Viva Taqueria is how how close that is to downtown. I used to say 2 blocks up the hill, but I was corrected. It's close to Margaritas. But that parcel is teed up to finally get all of its approvals by the end of the year and really start redevelopment. So we've worked a lot this year. We'll continue next year to look at potential investment opportunities, business attraction, business retention, co-location space up at Chainworks. The water and sewer study, which I know is near and dear to Martha's heart, that is supposed to be completed at the end of the year. We'll be engaging with the planning department to work with municipalities, first to present the results of the study and then identify, grant opportunities and work with municipalities or our service providers to facilitate some of those projects. The Economic Development Resource Providers is a new acronym for us, EDRP. This is something that I think really came out of COVID and was really a positive thing out of the COVID response, was all of the economic development, community development, workforce development service providers, not only in Tompkins County, but in the region as well, had started meeting weekly and sharing information and identifying tasks that each of us could take on rather than duplicating services. There is a real interest in continuing that collaboration. We've been meeting monthly for the past several months now, and we'll be continuing to do that next year so that we are not duplicating services, so that we are each complementing one another's services, and also monitoring the implementation of the countywide recovery strategy, which we were able to receive significant amounts of funding for a number of those action items in the mayor's budget for using some of that federal recovery funding, and we'll be pursuing other opportunities, whether they be at the county level, the state or federal level, to implement some of the other action items there. The manufacturing sector partnership is something I could talk about for an hour. I'm really excited about this. This is an employer-led sector partnership where the employers really drive the implementation items. They're at the table, they're identifying their needs, and all of us service providers sit on the outside and sort of say, okay, how can we work with you together to meet these needs? They've identified 3 things that they really want us all to work on, one being an entry-level soft skills training program that will be put together, that will pipeline entry-level employees potentially into the training program and then into entry-level employment with those manufacturers. They've also identified transportation and getting their workforce to work as an issue for them, as well as really just marketing the careers in manufacturing in general. So working with, whether it be middle school, high school the BOCES program, even TC3, to sort of create long-term pipelines and have an understanding of, these are really great careers. If you're not college bound, if you take a small skills course and you start as an entry-level third shift at Borg Warner, you might be making $18,000 a year to start. Within 3 years, you have training and apprenticeship opportunities. You can be making $60,000 a year within 3 to 5 years. A really
Heather, I hate to say
great
this,
career path.
Yeah, I hate to say this, but we're behind on time. If you want to.
Okay, so you can read them. I'm sure you've read them while I'm talking because we all multitask. So, the rest of our strategic special projects for next year really are around economic development leadership and also participating in a little bit of talent attraction to fill some of the in-demand occupations that go unfilled here in our community with some of our businesses. And that's what I have for you today.
All right, thank you very much. Again, a lot of meat, a lot of important stuff here. Comments or questions from the committee? I can't, Annie, go ahead. I can see one hand. Go ahead.
Heather, I want to thank you for all the work you've been doing in numerous areas, and especially with one that I've been working with you and others in as far as the labor agreement. That's huge, something for us all to be proud of. So thank you for your work, the staff, the committee's work on that. And I wanted to also ask, so my question is actually for Martha. I think I had asked earlier in the year, can Heather report every other month versus every month? So I think it's
we get a written report every month.
Right.
I think her, staff being here is usually every other month. Isn't that
Okay,
right?
but even I'm just wondering, even do we need the written report every month?
You mean less reporting? If you only want it every other month, I'm happy to do that.
Well, that's what I'm proposing to Martha. I mean,
well, I just got 2 more months, so it's like somebody else can figure that out. So
I will certainly coordinate with the next chair of HED to see what the appropriate level of reporting is. I want to make sure that I'm giving you information in a timely manner and that meets your needs, but I don't want to overload you.
Well, I appreciate it. I know it's been a lot of reporting you've done this year, so thank you very much, Heather.
I guess I usually see this 1 or 2 pages in a couple different places, so I think Heather may be doing it for other, the board, et cetera, anyway. So I do have 2 questions. One is on the, your work plan is, we talked yesterday, it's impressive and overwhelming, but I'm looking at on the core activities, not the special projects. Participate in initiatives that support business growth and expansion, energy, housing, air service, transportation, and infrastructure. If I could add something, childcare. I think we are becoming more and more aware that childcare is part of economic development infrastructure. I would say not that IAED would be a leader on it, but there may be ways in which supporting childcare providers as business developers that I would just kind of raise that as an issue.
Yeah, and I would be happy to add that. And I would remind you all that we were instrumental in helping to receive funding from the state CFA process for childcare expansions. TC3, IC3 completed their expansion this year. We also received funding for the Coddington Road Community Center as well as the YMCA that are still working through the expansion process.
Right, and the IDA provided almost $100,000 in grants directly to some providers too. So,
yep.
I think you're doing it. So just adding it to the list. And now another one. This is maybe a longer term question. In housing development, we see contractors, GCs, et cetera, who can build big apartment buildings. We see carpenters who can manage 1 or 2 or 3 fancy houses a year. We don't we don't have the middle range in terms of a middle-sized business that can build 20 or 30 homes in a neighborhood. Over the years, I've had conversations where it seems like there might be some of the individual entrepreneurs might, with some support, be able to ramp up to be able to hire more staff and manage larger operations. Is that something that would feel like an IAED project? Is that more of a chamber project? Do you have any thoughts about that?
My off the cuff, my initial reaction is that it costs more than $250,000 to build a single family home in this community. Water, sewer, infrastructure, it is a cost. And so I think we have seen a lack of contractors that build in this space, but also they can't earn a living doing it if they need to sell a house for more than $250,000. You're not getting that, affordable, entry-level family home. And part of that is the taxes as well. So, I don't know. I think there needs to be some significant underwriting if you want to see, a large development of single family homes or even townhomes. I think that, we need to, on one end, look at how we can reduce the property tax burden so that those houses can be affordable to homeowners. And entry-level homeowners. But I think on the other side, we need to write down some of the costs, either of the land or the infrastructure, for a larger housing development to really make those projects feasible. And then I think we could find developers that might be willing to look at, some of that kind of development.
Okay. All right. I know I just said we're out of time and I started a whole new conversation. So
happy to engage.
All right. Happy to talk about that. Anything else from anyone else for Heather? All right. Thank you, Heather. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
If I can ask us to do some quick, we've got Nick here for celebrations grant. If we can do this pretty fast. We also got a budget adjustment in your packet. Any questions about the budget adjustment for the tourism program? Okay, that's done. Nick, on celebrations grant. Can I get a motion, document 10423? Andy moves, Henry seconds. A word or two, Nick?
Sure thing. Yeah. So as you'll recall from July, we as a part of a adjustment to the budget, some funding was added to community celebrations grant, $10,000 to be specific. Shortly after that was passed, we rolled out a fall grant round. We got 8 applications back. The maximum award was $1,000, and that's what most people asked for. Total of $7,400 in requests. The rest of in your memo, you'll see the summary of the projects. I'll just note that most of the events, 6 of the 8 are happening between December and March. So adding some great stuff to the calendar here in the coming months when we're all looking for things to do. And yeah, I think the committee was overall generally happy with the applications that came through, and looking forward to seeing some of these events come back. So happy to answer questions if you have any.
Thank you, Nick. Any questions? All right, let's vote. Henry?
Yes.
Annie?
Yes.
Mike Sigler?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's unanimous. Thank you very much. All right, we're gonna.
I had one more question for Nick.
Sure, go ahead.
I had some folks in my Trumansburg ask about beautification grants. Did they contact you, or do you have any updates on that?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the rural grant program is still on hiatus. So we'll have some other options, some plants and some other services we can potentially help them with. But in terms of direct funding, I think still on hold. So, but we'll be in touch with them and ready when those things open up.
All right. Thank you very much.
Sure thing.
All right. Peggy Coleman, if you could just indulge us for a minute to do 2 other quick pieces of business. If I can get a resolution on the ITCTC salary here. Finding the page number, document 10465, affirming Ithaca Tompkins County Transportation Council's recommendation to increase the ITCTC staff director's salary. Moved by Annie, seconded by Henry. Discussion, questions? All right, let us vote. Annie,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
and I am a yes. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Any questions for Fernando for his trouble of waiting all this time? All right. Thanks very much, Fernando, for being here as always. And we have an appointment to the Strategic Tourism Planning Board, Marion Wilson. Could I get a motion to, Fernando, did you want to say anything or did you just waving goodbye?
Just waving goodbye.
Okay.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. Absolutely. Marion Wilson to the STPB. Can I get a motion? Moved by Henry, seconded by Annie. Let me just mention it says here temporarily living at the Statler Hotel. So I called her, said like, what does that mean? She's closing on a house in Newfield next week. She will be the Statler's, or she is the Statler's Director of Sales and Marketing. So they allowed her to kind of live there briefly while the house is being closed. So she is a resident and will continue to be permanently. She said, born and raised in Ithaca. All right, ready to vote on Marion? Annie?
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's unanimous. Thank you very much. And I feel so badly, Peggy, about the time. I guess we can't ever seem to get these agendas to wrestle, to the right time. Can everybody stay a few minutes extra for Peggy's presentation? Okay, let us go ahead. Hi, Peggy. Thank you.
Good morning. And I am always happy to wait. I appreciate the work and support you do for us. So thank you. And this was the last.
Peggy, hold on. Kathy, you want to say something?
Yes, I have a new meeting that I need to get ready for as well,
right.
A Zoom meeting. So
if we take 5 or 10 more minutes, are you okay?
I should be.
Okay, let's speed dial this one. Okay, thanks, Kathy.
Sure.
All right. Sorry, Peggy, go ahead.
That's okay. I will not even take 5 or 10 minutes. I'm not going to share my screen because that takes time as well. The presentation is on page 77 in your packet. And I appreciate Henry bringing this to Martha's attention to share with the committee. Basically, we are launching literally this weekend a hospitality awareness campaign entitled Tompkins Together. The tourism industry folks have been essential workers when all of us were able to go home and work in the comforts and safety of our home. They were there driving buses, welcoming people into their hotels, including isolation folks who were positive for COVID. And it's been a really hard, long time. And now that some folks believe the pandemic is over, we know it's not. They're still in a really tight labor situation, tighter than ever. And so the whole idea behind the campaign is to pull back the curtain and show the humanity of the people in our industry and just ask people to be kind. So you will see window clings, you'll see signs in windows, you'll see coasters in restaurants and bars and tasting rooms in our wineries, breweries, and cideries, basically encouraging people to be kind, to be patient, and we're in this together. So that hashtag Tompkins Together is something that we're doing in a soft way this weekend, and then we will back it up with some PR and some out of home advertising. We may need to talk to some folks about some billboards and other things, but we just thought it was really important for you all to be aware and to ask that you encourage your constituents and your communities to please embrace it. We have a toolkit. So for any of the businesses in your localities, we can send them the link. We've ordered coasters and window clings. We're happy to drop them off to them. And I know that doesn't really do the program justice, but I know you all need to get out of here. So that's the very Reader's Digest version of this program. And I'm happy to spend time with any of you individually to go into more detail.
No, thank you very much, Peggy. And I expect, when we're out and about, we will start seeing these. So that's great. Any questions from the committee? I was wondering, we hear stories on the media about people fighting about mask mandates in stores or restaurants, people being rude. Have we seen that here actually?
Unfortunately, what we've seen, we don't have challenges with people not wanting to wear masks. And that has been something that our team has experienced as that we've been out on the road again at trade shows and things, going to other communities where we are literally the only people wearing masks at these events. So, but the negativity towards the workers, absolutely. And it is residents, it is visitors, because people have that same expectation of service level that they had before the pandemic. And you know what, Martha, if you are cooking, serving, cleaning, and no one else is there to help you, you can't fill those other tables that are empty in your restaurant or assist the people in your shop because you need to go back into the stock or you need to clean and sanitize things to keep everybody safe. So there is the verbal abuse of people, unfortunately. And thank you, Annie, for liking the logo. Appreciate it.
You're saying local, we recognize this as local folks as well as tourists. And
Yes.
yeah, I mean, I think one thing that people have to remember that places aren't open as much as they used to be. When we've thought about going out, we say better check to see if they're actually open on a Tuesday. So, I mean, that's part of it.
And it is human nature. We were on house arrest is the way I phrase it for all those months and not being able to go out. So people are excited to be out and to be in these places. But just remember that we're all humans. We're doing the best we can. And everyone has been throughout the whole pandemic.
Annie?
I just have seen a lot of it on social media, people complaining individually. I haven't seen a lot of it directly at service providers, but I haven't been out as much because I have the privilege to often be able to work at home and order things. So, but I have, I know it's out there, and I really appreciate you working on this campaign. So I know we're over time, but so thank you very much.
Thank you
All right.
all.
Very good comment. Anything else from committee members? All right. Thank you very much, Peggy. Great creative idea, very positive message, and we'll continue to support what you're doing.
Thank you.
All right. With that, anything else from the committee? All right. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around a little longer. We are adjourned. Kathy, good luck with your next meeting. Thank you all.